Alright guys, this is the video for 6.1 graphing in vertex form. I'm going to go over the transformations in just a minute, but for now make sure you write this down. Here's the formula to write it in vertex form. A times x minus h squared plus k. Your vertex is at the point hk. One thing that you need to know is that h is going to be opposite signs of what it is in the equation that you get, because this negative here, okay, that's part of the equation. So if you get like a negative 2, your h is actually equal to positive 2. Your axis of symmetry is the same as before. It's the vertical line that cuts the parabola in half, and it's the vertical line x equals whatever h is. Okay, so whatever number is there goes down here, and that's nothing new. If a is positive, it opens upwards, and this is how you set up your range. Okay, and this side k is usually going to be, closed bracket over here. But that, is just depending on what your function looks like. If a is less than 0, it opens upwards. This is how you're going to set up that range. And domain for all parabolas is all real numbers. Now, another thing that I want to go over is transformations. So transformations is nothing new. We've already been over it. Okay, so this should just be a review. So for your transformations, there are 3 different pieces of information that we get here. Okay, A is the first one, and it tells us 2 things. The first one is whether it opens upwards. Okay, so if it's positive, if it's negative, it opens downwards, and that's going to give you a reflection. So I'm going to write that over here. The transformation, if it opens down, it's called a reflection. Okay. Now the other thing that you need to know is compression or stretch. Okay, so if it's a compression, that means that it's going to become more narrow. Okay, so something like this. Okay, and that's going to happen when A is a whole number. Okay, so either greater than 1 or less than negative 1. Greater or equal to 1, or A is less than or equal to 1. Okay, to negative 1. Sorry. So as long as it's some type of I don't want to say whole number because it could be like 1.5 or 1.6, but as long as it's not a fraction in itself, it's going to get smaller. It's a stretch if A is between 1 and negative 1. Okay, we'll do some examples. That means that it's going to get wider. The other transformation that we have is H. Okay, so that's going to tell you your horizontal shift, left to right, and K is going to tell you your vertical shift, up and down. The only thing that you need to be cautious of is your H. It's always going to be in the opposite direction of your formula. So if it's negative in the equation, you're moving in the positive direction, and if it's positive, you're moving in the negative direction. But we'll go over that. So here's our first example. We're going to go ahead and graph it. I strongly recommend that you write down your A, your H, and your K. And I'm also going to want you to solve for your zeros here because it's going to give you those 2 extra points. Okay, so here H is positive 6, so it's actually negative, and then K is plus 1. Okay, so we have a horizontal shift in the negative direction, a vertical shift in the positive. So I'm going to go ahead and plot my vertex. Okay, is going to be the point negative 6, negative 1. Sorry, K is negative 1 over here. Sorry, guys. Our axis of symmetry is the vertical line x equals h. Our domain for all parabolas is all Roman numbers. And then our range, we'll do that after we plot it. Okay, so our vertex is negative 6, negative 1. Axis of symmetry is the vertical line that passes through that. Okay, and we know it opens up because A is a positive 1. So we have something that looks like this. Okay, so if we're going to look at the range, because we have a minimum, we're going to have a closed bracket over here on the left, which is equal to whatever y is at the vertex, which is negative 1. And it's going to go to positive infinity. The last thing I'm going to want you to do is solve for your zeros. Okay, I want to know exactly what values it crosses the x-axis at. So the easiest way to do that would be to solve using the square root. So I'm going to have x plus 6 quantity squared minus 1 is equal to 0. So in order to solve that, add 1 to each side. X plus 6 quantity squared is equal to 1. Take the square root of both sides. X plus 6 is equal to plus or minus 1. Move that 6 over. Okay, so we have x is equal to 6 plus or minus, negative 6 plus or minus 1, which is going to give us x is equal to negative 6 plus 1 is going to be negative 5. Negative 6 minus 1 is negative 7. Okay, so our zeros here, it's actually going to cross the axis right here at negative 5 and negative 7. So if we want to graph this correctly, okay, this is what it's going to look like. Okay guys, here's our second example. Same thing. A is equal to negative 3, so we know that we're going to have a reflection. Okay, so it's going to open down and it's going to be a stretch. Okay, it's going to become more narrow. So we have a reflection here and a compression. Okay, h is equal to positive 4, opposite of what it is inside the equation, and k is equal to negative 7. So our vertex is the point hk for negative 7. Axis is symmetry, vertical line x is equal to 4. Domain is all real numbers. Because it's going to open downwards, we're going to have a maximum. Okay, so it's going to open like this with our vertex right there, which means our minimum value for y is going to be negative infinity, and our maximum value is going to be whatever value we have for y in our vertex, so negative 7. Okay, close bracket. So let's solve for our zeros. Okay, here we are going to get some fractions. So let's set it up. We have negative 3 times x minus 4 squared plus 7 equals to 0, minus 7 on each side. Negative 3x minus 4 squared is equal to negative 7. Divide both sides by 3. Negative 3. So that negative is going to cancel out on both sides. So we have x minus 4 quantity squared is equal to positive 7 over 3. Take the square root of each side. Okay, and I'm actually just going to plug this into the calculator because we need the decimals to graph them. So plus 4. Now if you take the square root of 7 over 3, you're going to get 1.527 on each side. So I'm just going to plug that in for the plus or minus. You guys can do the math if you want to. So the two answers that you get are 5.53 and 2.47. Okay, so for our zeros we have x is equal to 5.53, 2.47. So now I'm just going to plot my points. I have my vertex at 4, negative 7. Right here. My zeros at 5.5-ish and 2.5-ish, right about there. Axis of symmetry right down the middle. Okay, so if you go ahead and plot or draw your parabola, you're going to notice that it got pretty skinny there. Okay, I don't expect your parabolas to be pretty, but I do expect your points to be accurate. All right. If you have any questions there, let me know. Shoot me a message or an email. If not, we can go over it in class. I'll have the homework posted on the website.